In this video, I'll be talking about how will education enhance your knowledge and personality. Hey, it's Tobey here from Training Business Pros. Thanks for joining me. The topic of education is one in which many people think about in their lives. They're deciding what to do. Maybe you're thinking about traditional education and what that entails and how much that will cost and if that will actually enhance your knowledge and your personality. And in this video, I'm going to share some pretty keen insights, not into just the knowledge from the different types of education, but also how does that actually change your personality? You're going to want to know this, so let's get started. Okay, today we're tackling the subject of education. And to begin, let's talk about the two different types of education. The first type is traditional, and the second is non-traditional. So traditional is that education that most people are aware of. You start in primary school, middle school, then high school, then college or university or both. And that's typically known as traditional education. It is common for most people to do that. Many people after high school decide not to move on with post-secondary education, but many people do. And the reason why they do that is because it's what everyone does. And it's a good choice if you're looking for a career or a job. I always say traditional education gets traditional results. And if you want traditional results, then that's probably a good system. I will say, on the other hand, that it is quite expensive for post-secondary education. So you might want to look at that and think to yourself, okay, if I do this, what are my career prospects? Will I actually be able to get a job? Because the reality is, and you may not know this, that only 3% of people actually end up working in their field that they studied at university. So that's an interesting statistic. 3% is not that high. In fact, if you said to me, Paul, you're going to go to music school, which I did. I went to university for music and I have a degree in music, but you really only have a 3% chance of actually working in your field. Well, I ended up being a professional musician, which took a bunch of other types of training, but essentially I did end up working in my career of choice. But most people will not. So that's something you really need to factor into your decision. Of course, many people choose traditional arts or humanities or history or geography and these types of courses. So there really isn't careers surrounding those things, but they're just looking for sort of general education and then maybe getting a job at a office or something like that. I'm not exactly sure what you're looking for, but you really have to factor that into your choice. Now, let's talk a little bit about non-traditional. So non-traditional education is something that I found infinitely more valuable. It's not only less expensive, well, it really depends on how you look at it and who you choose to learn from. But non-traditional is something that I didn't really find until I was in my late 30s, early 40s. And I started taking courses with a company called Peak Potentials. Now, the interesting thing about this is when you start to talk about personality changing, your personality is something that is essentially governed by your emotions. And if you look at traditional education, they don't really tackle this subject at all. In fact, it's called personal growth. And along with personal growth, I, of course, took some business courses and some courses in marketing and things like that, all from non-traditional sources, which is mentors, online courses, seminars. I would essentially go to somebody's location and do intensive study for like a week, things like that, very non-traditional. And of course, yes, business courses, but the self-growth or the personal growth side of it is something that they don't necessarily teach. Well, actually, I don't think necessarily is the right word. They don't teach at all this concept of personal growth in college or university or even high school. And they should, because it's an important part of your personality. In fact, let's take a look at the emotional set point scale. And if you don't know what that is, just Google it. Actually, I've got some videos on this channel that talk about the emotional set point scale. Let me post a link up here to one of those videos. You might want to check that out after this, where you've got this scale of 22 different types of emotions ranging all the way from the lowest, number 22, which is fear, grief, and despair and powerlessness, all the way up to number 1, which is joy, the word knowledge, yes, empowerment, love, appreciation, expectation, and everything in between, which is, as you go up the scale, you're getting more and more higher types of energy and personality associated with moving up that scale. But I can tell you, nobody showed me that scale in college or university. So therefore, you have to kind of, after traditional, maybe seek out some non-traditional types of education because they get very different results. In fact, if I look at the investment that I made in personal development courses as well as professional development from non-traditional sources, my return on that investment was in the neighborhood of 400,000% versus college or university in which you're basically, it took me 13 years to pay off my student loans as a professional musician. So the return on investment is very different in non-traditional as it is in traditional. So the investment in your education for non-traditional courses tends to get a much higher result than traditional. But of course, many people don't know it exists and they don't seek it out. And I think from my perspective, personal development was one of the most powerful things that I've ever done because that's what governs my personality. As my emotional set point scale changes from low energy to high, so does my personality. I become much more animated and much more enthusiastic, and people can see that you are enthusiastic and happy and, far more than just bored and content doing the same things day after day and sometimes expecting different results, which of course we know they will never come. And that's why I always recommend to people that if you were going to do something today to enhance your knowledge and your personality, consider taking non-traditional training. And of course, as a person who's been in the training business since 2004, I would suggest taking some type of course. Now, I have personally trained thousands of people in personal and professional development. You can go to that'sambitious.com. You can go to trainingbusinesspros.com if you want to ask me a question here in the channel about what you should do next. In other words, what courses should I take that's going to get me a non-traditional result? Yes, you want to go find another job or another career, go take traditional education. But try to remember this, they're not going to talk at all about you becoming a better person. They're going to fill your head with facts and figures and knowledge that's going to help you carry out your next career. But that's not going to change much about your ability to truly attract the great things in life. And that's why I recommend personal growth. Now, I first discovered this with a group of people like Peak Potentials, but one of the biggest mentors I had was a guy named Brian Clemmer, who was a very prominent trainer, and he had a big training company in the United States. And I did spend a weekend with him once, just me and him. And I remember him saying lots of things that could help me start attracting more of the good things in life. And he basically had a two-part formula, which was be emotionally involved. So whatever you choose to do, be emotionally involved. And second, repeat things over and over again. Now, the repeating part I already understood because as a musician, I think I've learned over the years that you can't just play something without practice. You can't become a professional musician if you don't put in the time and understand how that all works. Like, the way your brain works with your fingers, works with your heart, everything associated with being a performer. So that was good advice from Brian Clemmer. Be emotionally involved, and that of course changes your personality. So that's why what I mean by your personality is governed by your emotions. And then second, repeat things over and over again. But what are the things that you repeat? That's why non-traditional education is important, because it's typically done by experts in their field who are just looking to help you avoid some of the mistakes that they made and get some of the successes that they have. That's what I've done for many years in my training company. So I suggest that if you're looking to enhance your knowledge and personality today, go check out some of the other videos here at Training Business Pros channel on YouTube. And I look forward to seeing you in another video. Thanks for your time.